Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Safety Committee meeting for September the 10th, 2025. The time is 16:30 hours. First thing on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. Next thing we'll move on to is visitors and public comments. Anyone want to speak to the Safety Committee? I don't see anyone, so we'll move on to Chief's reports, and we'll start off with Chief Dorland.
Thank you, Mr. Copley. Looking at the emergency dispatch department statistics for August, they handled 3,740 phone calls. Of those phone calls, 293 of them came in through the 911 system. The total calls for service in August were 1,741. 82% of those calls were police related and 18% were fire or EMS related. And that's pretty consistent through all the months. We tend to see that 80 to 85% of those calls being police related. The busiest day of the week for August was Wednesday, with an average number of calls for service of 65, followed by Friday and Thursday. And the busiest time of the day was still in that late morning time period, but a little bit earlier than usual. The highest average number of calls for service occurred between 10 and 11 a.m. District 2 was the busiest district last month with 650 calls for service, followed by District 1 with 511 and District 3 with 489 calls. Looking at the patrol division, the officers made 354 traffic stops last month and issued 99 traffic citations. And as we've seen during pretty much this entire year, those numbers are really elevated just compared to each month last year, and also year to date. We're tracking really, really high with traffic stops and traffic citations. In August, the officers handled 43 crash reports. 19 of those were property damage only. 10 of them involved an injury, and 14 were private property. The number of injury accidents really jumps out just compared to not only August of last year, but also just in general. Luckily, all 10 of those crashes, which involved 13 injuries, were either possible injury or minor injury, so nobody was seriously injured in any of those crashes. The other number in the accident report data that stands out are the crashes involving pedestrians. We had 2 crashes involving pedestrians, which resulted in 3 of them being injured. Again, luckily, none of them were seriously injured. One of them involved an elderly person operating a motorized wheelchair, where she ran into the side of a vehicle that was stopped at a traffic signal. And the other one involved a truck that was making a turn off of Valley View Drive onto Orchard Street and struck 2 pedestrians that were in the crosswalk. Again, luckily, it didn't involve any fast driving or reckless driving. It was just simply a case of the driver's view being partially obstructed as he was making the turn, and he just simply didn't see the pedestrians at the crosswalk.
So none of these occurred in the downtown area, as we've talked about in past meetings?
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions about the dispatch data or the patrol division data?
Was the elderly person on a scooter on the roadway, or were they in the crosswalk?
She was going from the sidewalk into the roadway. Any other questions?
Gentlemen?
None for me.
Okay.
Looking at the investigative report data, I'm just going to touch on 2 categories. The first one is the child endangering. We had 3 cases involving endangering children in August, compared to 0 last year. But then even this year-to-date number is tracking quite a bit higher than 2024. Several of these categories are like an umbrella that have a number of offenses beneath them. So whenever we see child endangering or sex offense, we think of the worst case scenario. But child endangering is one of those situations where there's a lot of minor offenses within that. But so even though we handled 3 cases, 2 of them resulted in either no charges or were unfounded. But one of them did result in a felony charge, and that person was arrested for failing to supervise their children. The next category I wanted to touch on is the number of sex offenses that we saw in August. big increase from August of last year. And year-to-date, we're tracking pretty consistently with what we did last year. But again, sex offenses involve many different types of situations involving minor offenses to the worst-case scenario. In August, a lot of these offenses were either unfounded, involved like a public indecency allegation, or other misdemeanor offenses. Can't really talk about the specifics for a lot of these cases, but it's not the worst case scenario just when you see that category
It's not
of
as bad
sex
as it
offense.
sounds.
Exactly. One thing to note though with sex offense cases, we do investigate those to the fullest extent. So it either involves the patrol officers or the detective bureau conducting these investigations, and they take a lot of hours. There's a lot of interviews, just a lot of data to comb through a lot of times. So they're very labor intensive and very time intensive for the officers. Any questions about the investigative reports?
I have none.
In August, the officers made 42 arrests. Again, that's down from the previous year, and we tend to see these numbers fluctuate just depending on the different agencies that might be honoring warrants that are entered. We see a lot of the agencies not wanting to honor the warrants, and therefore the person's not arrested. So that's one of the reasons we tend to see those numbers continually falling from month to month. For non-investigative calls for service, officers responded to calls involving assisting a householder or a motorist, the most last month with 118 calls for service, followed by investigating a suspicious person or a vehicle. As usual, the officers had the opportunity to participate in a number of community outreach events. The two major ones last month involved National Night Out. We had a really good turnout, really good participation from other agencies and just other organizations that wanted to participate. And we also participated in the Coffee with a Cop event at the Suprema Senior Center. Officers also attended 6 different internal and external trainings during the month. Luckily, we have instructors within the department that are able to conduct some of these trainings at no cost to the department. Any questions?
Nothing from me. How about you?
Just one, were you guys able to do an after-action report on balloons over Wadsworth, and how did that go?
We have one scheduled for later this
Next
month?
week.
Next week.
Next week?
Next week.
But overall, the event went really well. The smoothest it's been since they've been doing this event. We'll have more details after the after-action meeting.
I think we had to shut down traffic on Seville Road once, but I think in total for maybe less than 10 minutes. They've made some solid improvements to parking and check-in, and they've continued to be responsive. Just say from a group coordination effort, I will say the event organizers have been responsive to our needs and requests, and I think in general have taken an event that from a safety forces perspective, not an overall event perspective, but a safety forces perspective that was problematic to put on. Personally, I feel much, much better, and I think they still remain engaged in terms of them reaching out to us to say, hey, we know in the past you've wanted an after action, so let's have an after action. So I think a lot of good communication and good follow through on the event organizer's part.
Yeah, I can't think of a different organization who has been as responsive to making changes from year to year as they have been. They've been excellent at taking our feedback and putting those into action.
Good.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Does that complete your report?
It does.
Okay. We'll move on to our fire chief, Chief Linder.
Thank you, Mr. Copley. We'll start off with our fire department numbers. So for the month of August, we had 25 fire calls, 16 within the city, 3 in the township. We did get called for mutual aid on 6 occasions. We had 19 officer call-outs, 8 inspections, 8 car seat public education events that we participated in. Average response time was just under 6 minutes. Average firefighter on duty working at the station when those calls came in was at just over 5. Average firefighter recall was down. We just had over 1 person coming back on that. So that brought our average firefighter turnout total for all the calls just over 6 on that. So year to date, on the firefighter recall, we were down about 25%. If you look at the firefighter turnout overall, we're down slightly at 8% on that.
What do you contribute this to?
So a lot of that vacations.
You're doing summer, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say part-timers and full-timers alone at vacations was, I think, a big factor on that. All right, our call volume over time, our busiest time, usually when we saw most of the calls, had kind of close around 11 o'clock in the morning, and then between 5 and 6 o'clock at night was our biggest times. Again, property breakdowns, majority of them, again, residential, and then we did have a couple street roadways, restaurant, cafeterias. Counts by station, we had 189 calls out of Station 1 and then 119 out of Station 2. Any questions on that?
I've just got one quick question. I've been following these numbers for several months.
Yep.
And our fire calls, our total runs are down 6%. But when I go down and look at the inspection activities, they've dropped from 47 last August compared to 8 for this August. But our calls are lower. You know my background's fire prevention. Your background was
and
fire
mine,
prevention.
mine as well, yes.
And I just can't understand what's going on here.
So we'll get to that when we get to the EMS. Our fire calls are down. EMS, which is the majority of our calls, 85%, is up.
But don't we require every full-time to be an inspector?
Yes, we do.
So we have more inspectors today than we had 10 years ago. But yet our inspection numbers are still down.
So 10 years ago, I mean, I'd have to go back to see what we had. Yes, we have more inspectors now than what we did 10 years ago. But
Could
again,
you take a harder look at this and, maybe justify what's going on here?
I can look at that. Yep.
I'd appreciate it. That's the only question I have, guys.
I've got none.
Anything for you guys?
Yes, sir.
All right, moving on to the next page. On the left side, just our incident types. For the EMS, if we look at in the city, we had a total of 241 calls for the month, 23 in the township and 2 out of the district. So that gave us a total of 268 EMS calls, brought us a year-to-date 2,089. Majority of those calls, if we do the city breakdown, in city District 1, which was 119, 41 in City 3, which is the south end, and then north end is 83. Average response time just under 4 minutes. Mutual aid given, so we did provide mutual aid, EMS mutual aid on 2 occasions. We received mutual aid on 7. So year to date, we're from 24 to this year, we're trending just slightly over on the mutual aid received, under on the mutual aid given. Second ambulance calls were 64, third ambulance calls 19, and fourth 1. So the third ambulance calls has still been trending this year, slightly above where we were this time last year as well. Any questions on that page? Okay. Next, our hospital transports. The majority of transports for August were taken to Sumo Wadsworth ER. Close second is usually Barberton. Numbers still, if you look at year-to-date 24 to 25, we are trending up at Wadsworth. Is the biggest difference that I see between the 2 years. Looking at our EMS yearly comparison from August of 24 to this year, we are up 6% on our call volume for EMS. Looking at total calls for service, so counting fire and EMS, we again are 6% above where we were this time last year, about 141 calls more than this time last year. I'm anticipating, I think we're probably going to finish the year close to about 3,500 calls. If the trend stays the way it is, I think that's where we're going to end, which would be the most we've ever had. ALS, BLS data, 122 on the ALS, 78 on BLS. We did not provide Narcan for any patients last month, and classification, we did not have any overdose patients. Our daily call volume, slightly different than PD's. Our busiest day was Friday, with a close second of Wednesday. Any questions on that page? Last page, just some of the in-house training we did for fire and EMS. We did have one full-timer that was completing his fire inspector class. Some of the events that we participated, as the police chief mentioned, National Night Out, Balloons Over Wadsworth. We also participated in Discover Church Touch the Truck event up off of Reimer Road. That completes that report. Just on the part-time open shifts and our regular open shifts. So for the month of August, to fill the part-time shifts was down. Normally we're in the 30% range, 30 to 40. We were at 13% for August. Looking at the open shifts, taking count the full-timers and part-timers to fill all the shifts that needed. August was the most that we had to fill. And we were down to 53%. Normally we're in the mid-60s, so we were down about 10% for the month of August. Already looking at September, just I do it in the initial. It does fluctuate. Things change in the schedule, but we're at 57%. So higher than what we were in August, which is, I'd rather see go back up than down further. So
Yeah, sure.
that was open shifts, and that completes my report, unless there's any questions.
How many CPR instructors do we have? I noticed we did 3 classes for PE.
Yes, off the top of my head, I think we have about 6.
6. Do we
I
still
can
do
get
any
you that
classes
exact,
for the
I can get
public?
you, I'm sorry.
Do we still do classes for the public?
We do,
Okay.
we do. We try to, I know our administrative assistant keeps a log of who's they call in, and we try to not just do 1 or 2, but
Right.
get a group of people together and do them, yes.
Okay.
But I'll get you the exact number of instructors, but off the
Oh,
top of my
that's
head,
okay. I just wondered if we still did it for the public.
Oh, yes, yes.
You know, doctors' offices,
Yep.
dentist offices, and all that kind of stuff.
We still do.
Okay. Good. Any questions, gentlemen, on the fire?
I have none.
Okay, we'll move on then to staffing updates. Director
Mr.
Chafin.
Chairman. So looking at the patrol officer police department updates, we'll start from the top, and since our last meeting, we have a new promotion. Lieutenant Pettit began his new role this week. We did a private swearing in. To his credit, he wanted to get to work rather than worry about some of the pomp and circumstance, so we did that this week, and he is getting adjusted to his new role. I know Chief is excited to have someone else there to help break up the workload in the short term, but we're very excited about that. That means we will need to hold, and we have scheduled, a sergeant's promotional process that will begin shortly, as we'll have to backfill Lieutenant Pettit's position there in the sergeant's ranks. Tomorrow is the last day for the police department to accept applications for our test. That will be on September 18th, and that will replace my position in the turnover. So that would be for our 34th officer out of the group there.
How many applicants do we have as of today?
I made a phone call before the meeting and wasn't able to get connected, so I do not have a count for you today.
Okay.
But we should have all of those tomorrow, so I can provide that in an email to the committee.
Lieutenant Pettit, would you like to introduce yourself to the citizens? Walk to the podium there and tell Wadsworth a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Seth Pettit. Been with the Wadsworth Police Department for about 14 and a half years. Obviously, I served as a patrolman, canine handler, sergeant for the last 4 years, and was recently promoted to lieutenant. I look forward to working with Chief Dorlin and Director Chafin, and ready to take on this next step in my career. So thank you, and
Thank you.
good night.
Thank you very much. Very well-deserved promotion.
On the fire side of the house, since our last meeting, we brought on a new part-time firefighter, and we had a new full-time firefighter start this week. Committee members, if you're available, I know it's short notice, and I apologize for that, but Thursday, so tomorrow at 3 p.m. here in council chambers, we will be swearing in Jaden Trunco, if you are available and would like to attend. Also, Chief has just finished reviewing another part-time candidate's background, so I will take that on and we will decide if we'll move that person farther on in the process. That's where we're at on the fire side. With dispatch, we have one candidate who will be completing the final pre-hiring phase this week. That'll be a lateral dispatcher, and we have another candidate that is essentially almost done, should be done. Chief, would it be fair to say by end of week or early next week for that background?
That's the hope, yes.
Okay. And then we have another candidate that has started the background process there as well too. If all three of those work out as we hope and would expect, that would put us at full staffing for the dispatch.
Full staff and dispatch.
Yeah.
We're down 1 in fire,
Correct.
and we're down 3 still in police, with you guys moving around and everything.
So the new officers that are at OSP current, so we have 3 in the academy right now. We have 2 at OSP, 1 at Lorraine. Those 2 that were at OSP prior to my move were supposed to be 33 and 34. My move opened up a spot at 34, so they are now 32 and 33. So we have 1 spot to fill. I do think it would be reasonable to anticipate potentially 1 or 2 retirements next year. So we'll see what that overall list is and sort of how it performs, and we can make some decisions maybe later this year as to continue that list, or maybe we might want to make some other decisions.
Because it's been several years since we've been at full strength.
It's been my entire tenure as chief, the last 4 years that we were working on getting back to full staffing, and in some discussions with HR, I believe there were several years under Chief Ranke as well that we weren't. So it has been some time since we've been at full staffing on the police department. And again, with those numbers to some degree, it's a little bit of a misnomer because we've got those last 3 candidates
3
we
in the
talked about.
academy
They're all
that
at the
don't count,
academy.
really.
It doesn't actually count
No.
yet. And when they come back from the academy, they're going to enter into their 14 to 16 week long field training phase. And during that entire phase, they don't actually count as somebody.
Right.
They can't fill overtime. They can't backfill a shift for us. They've always got to have their FTO with them. So even if we hired somebody off this list, it'll really depend on if they have the academy or not. But if we have to send 34 to the academy, we could theoretically have 1 or 2 retirements that happen during that phase, or at least we become aware of. So
Have we ever considered giving extra points to the ones that have the academy?
we do. So we give bonus points for academy, we give bonus points for bachelor's, we give bonus points for associate, and we give bonus points for military credit if they produce their DD 214. So we do have those in place. I just think, unfortunately, at least during my tenure as chief, and chief, if you want to weigh in as well too, from your perspective, we've seen a real mix in terms of what that candidate pool looks like. I mean, ultimately, number one, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the candidate pool. I think,
Or just watch the news tonight or see what?
when I
People don't
when I
wanna
took
do
the
it.
test, I'm assuming when Lieutenant Pettit took the test, 14, 15 years ago, I think I was one of 197 or 98 applicants, and a good test for us recently has been in the low to mid 30s, and some of those tests have been low 20s. And we have seen, and I think we've been pretty lucky, we have been able to pick up officers from other agency. We've had 2 recently from Akron that have come over and not only had the OPATA, but had some experience. But then simultaneously, we've seen some candidates that don't have anything in terms of OPATA. I think my focus was and would continue to be, and I would assume that Chief Dorland's would be the same, is that we do try to put an emphasis on the right person. If we find somebody in that process that we believe is a higher caliber individual and more capable, even if they don't have OPATA, I'd rather make that upfront investment and get the right person, because that goes into it as well too. We've had some candidates that come through that do have OPATA, but they just aren't a good fit for our organization. So,
And it's been very tempting over the years when we've been down on personnel, when we get officers from other agencies or that are OPATA certified, to very tempting to want to hire them to get them on the road quickly, but our philosophy has always been to hire the right person, the person that we can have on our department for the next 25 years and to make our department better.
Well, you gotta have sound candidates, because Wadsworth is a, close-knit community. You want that cohesiveness and everything. You gotta make sure they fit the mold, per se.
Yeah, so luckily we've just maintained that standard of not compromising our hiring practices.
I would add too. is that-
I'm not asking you to compromise. I'm just asking questions.
Yep. No, I think those are important. Those are important things for the committee to know and have perspective on. And if anybody that's watching or would review the minutes of this, I think it's an important perspective there too. I think even with the reduction in numbers as well too, even though it hasn't been all in one test, we've been able to find the right people at the right time. I feel really good personally about the officers that we've brought on in the last 4 years. I think that's the general consensus of the supervisors and chief as well too. So
Yeah, we've got some very good officers. Very good. The ones that I've dealt with. Questions, Joe?
I think our officers are fantastic. They seem like a close-knit group too, which is encouraging.
And I think they have the right mix of, they're there to enforce the law, but they're also there to take care of the public. And I think you see that in a lot of our individual cases where, one, they're willing to go above and beyond to try to solve cases, but they also routinely go above and beyond just to try to help people. I think you can see that a lot in our mental health cases where they really do take a lot of steps to treat people with respect and dignity, but also to come up with a reasonable solution for that individual as well too. So,
Keep on doing what you're doing.
any other questions as they relate to staffing?
I have none.
Okay, we'll move on to legislation.
So we have a couple of items here. So the first one that we can talk about, and this is something that for the past several months we've talked about as a committee, and this would be the draft legislation for the lift assist fees at skilled nursing facilities that we've discussed.
I've read through this. The only thing, how did we come up with the first lift assist in a 12-month period is free?
So essentially, and this is full discussion, so this is
Yeah,
just
this
a
is-
starting point. I am not married necessarily to anything in here. I think in the last update, we did not have our last meeting, but via email, Chief here has already talked to all of those facilities and sort of put it on their radar that this is a discussion that's happening and something that could likely be expected. We essentially mirrored this off of some of our other ordinances that we have that involve whether it's individuals or like the alarm notice,
Yeah.
for example. So you get X number of, free alarm notices, and then once that's triggered, you begin the fee schedule. So essentially, we just mirrored this off that same strategy. We do something similar also on the police side with the nuisance ordinances. So if we're repeatedly going to a property over and over again, we can say, hey, look, in the last 6 months, we've been out to your house 3 times. We can also notify a property owner. We've been out there 3 times. If we come out a 4th, you're eligible for a charge. If we come out more, that charge can increase. We've used that as a tool as well too. So this was just mirrored off of both of those, saying, generally speaking, before we assess a fee, we want to provide, obviously Chief has done that, but we want to provide that written notice or official notice that, hey, you're put on notice that if we come back here again, and we could talk about that either, one, having additional to it or reducing that
No,
altogether.
I think what, even if we adopt it the way it is, if we see it's not working, we can always go back in and amend it, over time and everything.
Right.
When you talk to the facilities and everything, how is it received?
For the most part, there was one that, one facility, basically, they said that, well, we're just going to pass it on to the family. And then it seemed like they didn't want to take any responsibility of it.
But they're
on
getting
it.
the bill, so.
Right. Yes, correct. They will. The biggest question I had from everybody, and I couldn't answer at that time, was they wanted to know, all right, what's the fee? What's it going to be? And I said, as soon as I know, so once this starts working through, I'll probably send it out. This is our draft at this point, just to give them notice. But that was the biggest question I got. I think everybody seemed to understand. I don't think it's their intent to do lift assist. I mean, that's what the impression I got from talking to all of the directors. I don't think it's something that they wanted. And quite honestly, I mean, the past 2 months, from what I've seen, haven't seen any.
No, it's
So-
dropped after you had those conversations.
So, yeah, it was minor in the beginning, but yeah, definitely July and August, we didn't have any. So, yeah, once if this passes through and starts to go through, I'll probably forward them the draft version, just, hey, this is what we're looking at this point, just so they all have that.
I would like to just, I mean, it's up to you two, but I would like to move this forward, get it in place. I mean, because it's using up our resources. A lot of other communities have had to go this route because the skilled nursing facilities and stuff don't have the manpower and stuff.
Mr. Chairman, I'll bring one more point up, and Chief, you can weigh in as well, too. We had it here in the draft is 15 days to get back with them. I guess my only question is administratively, is that enough time?
No, it's not.
I would think 30 is
30.
in my mind, and Chief, I don't know if you agree or disagree with that assessment, but
It's usually how most of our billing is on a 30-day cycle, so
Yeah,
I think
I
30 is
I would agree with
adequate.
that. I seen the 15 days and that kind of, I thought, well, maybe they know something I don't know, but 30 days makes more sense to me. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
I agree because I know that the facilities don't act that quickly. I have experience with those and they don't get their checks out.
And internally as well, too, I know that we're doing this to help protect our resources, but I also don't want to create a really tight administrative deadline internally that becomes, from an administrative perspective, difficult to do as well, too. So I'll do the invoice.
So
within
invoice within 30
30.
and give them 60 to pay. How's that sound?
So we're doing 30 for us to send the invoice and 60
And
to
then
receive.
60 total from the date of the incident to get paid before you go, to the next step. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, my only other comment would be is back to the fee schedule is, I have no issue giving them a zero fee for the first time, but I don't think it should start over at a 12-month period. So it should be worded in that first time fee is per facility. Like it shouldn't, it makes it worded like, come 12 months later, we start back over
You get
at.
a freebie.
We give them a freebie, the way it's worded.
Correct, and I think that would also be my interpretation as well, too. And again, full discussion, whatever the committee would like to move forward with. That's essentially what we do on the nuisance, is a rolling period of time.
And the alarm ordinance was the same way.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they've already been told that we're not going to do this for free. So you could start over with that fee structure the second year, or whenever it you know what I'm saying? It could be worded that
The only thing I would say, and it's, things do have, but they do have a high turnover in staffing as well, and that's the one thing that,
Well, like I said, we can amend this at any time. If we see, let's try it for the first year, and next September, take a look at it. See how it's working. That's what we're doing at the EV charging station. We'll go through it for a year and take a look at it then and see, what needs to be done to fix it.
no, and I think it will be interesting to see what if impact there is on the calls. If this does have the effect that's intended, or if it stays consistent.
Yeah.
Like the one facility the chief mentioned, the fact that we're going to pay it, but we're going to just move the charges to the individual or the family. Now,
But we're not charging the individual or the family.
Right.
The facility is.
Right.
I mean.
Right.
And our fees are cheap compared to some of them that I've read. Some of them is $1,500.
Yeah, and I think this is justified in it's essentially, this would be it's the same as the no transport. It's the refusal, the $200, so I think that makes sense, at least as a starting point. So.
I'd like to move it forward, get it passed.
Okay. I'll make a motion to move the draft legislation on elect-assisted skilled nursing facilities fee to council.
I'll second that.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll have it committee of the whole, can have it ready. And by then, with the changes that we've talked about, the 30 days and the 60 days.
Yep.
All that.
Yep, I think that's very reasonable.
And should we let it go 3 readings so the public hears about it? I mean, because it really doesn't involve the public, it's, private facilities. If the chief's going to send them out notice once it's passed, we could suspend and call and get it in place now.
I would be in favor of suspending and calling it, and let's get it moving.
John?
Yeah, I mean, if not, you're
Yeah, it's,
a month and a half.
Yeah.
right, okay. So we're suspend and call?
Yes.
Duke, any other comments before we
I
move
have
forward?
none.
Medina County All Hazards Mitigation Plan. Please don't read the whole thing to us.
Mr. Chairman, I don't even plan to read my 20-page summary, which feels ridiculous to call a summary something that's 20 pages long. So I would just simply ask if the committee has any questions or anything else that we need to wrap up. I would just tell the committee it's not our document and there are a lot of things that it touches. So happy if you have questions to go find answers to those. But
It's a very good, well-written plan. I mean, I was involved with EMA for 30 years, and I did go through your whole summary and went back and looked at some of the things in the plan. I think it's a good plan, so, I mean, my recommendation would be to move it on to council and
very good.
pass it.
I'll make a motion that we move this on to council.
Second?
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next thing on our agenda then brings us to
Engine 3
Engine 3
updates.
update.
Chief, I will turn it over to you.
All right, so I'm happy to report Engine 3 came back on Monday, and on Tuesday it left for a good reason. So when it came back, it was due for its annual preventive maintenance, checking the oil, going through over the entire truck and doing its annual pump test. So I felt that as soon as that truck came back, I wanted to send it out to make sure that that's all done as well. So when it comes back to us, the crews can feel confident and we can go on this. I just wanted to talk about some of the issues that they came up and found and repaired with the engine. So it did go up to Charlotte, Michigan to do diagnostics and repairs on that. One of the main, I would say our main issue was unit fails to complete the pump shift operation from road to pump or back from pump to road on that. What they determined was a lot of it was because of the amount of pressure. It never had enough pressure on it. Had to have at least the 90 PSI on that. So some of the remedies that they came up with, they actually installed a specific air tank just for the pump shift controller on that. Along with that, they did put a one-way check valve, so it's only dedicated for that. With the truck not running, they're able to actually shift it from both road to pump and pump to road 8 or 9 times without it truck even being running. So there's adequate air supply on that. Another thing that they found and adjusted was the air governor for that, the air PSI. So they found that it was the thresholds originally on it. It was turning on basically at 91 PSI, so 91 to 90 is not enough. So they did adjust that to increase it. So now the cutoff is 105 to 103 when the 105 is when it's cutting in, turning on, and then the 130 is when it's shutting off on that. So that was the two systems. When they had that, they were able to basically, before they started making the repairs, come up with the same issues that we were having. So they were pretty confident in the 2 repairs that they did with that, that they solved that issue. Another issue that we had, the manual override switch for the pump shift on that. In the back, there's basically electrical connections. They would, put the connections on, they would put grease and lube it. They were finding corrosion on that, so they actually ended up replacing that manual override switch with a potted, so it's all sealed behind unit. So that can hopefully eliminate any type of electrical issues with that manual pump override. That was something else that they did. Along with that, they did make a couple parameter changes for the transmission-driven PTO. Cummins actually came out there and in the ECM, they did make a couple of adjustments on that. So basically for us, it's what they call a steady load in the transmission driven. It's applications for the transfer case installed downstream of the transmission, which is used to drive the PTO device. So they made that change as well. We also noticed towards the end, right before we were sending it out, the mileage and speedometer would go out. Unfortunately, they could not replicate that the entire time they have it. Driving up to Michigan, the whole almost 3 months that it was up there, they could never duplicate that like they could with the pump shift. But they did find in the trucks, they, all the fault codes, they can see what codes are being pulled. There was a specific code that they found through the history of this, and one of those Cummins had a technical service bulletin that specifically addressed that fault. So they did have a Cummins technician come in there. They did a calibration update. They actually put multiple updates, calibration updates on that. And one of them was specifically for that code that we were kept throwing. So they think that should solve the speedometer issue, that the eradication that we were seeing with that. Unfortunately, the whole time that they had it, it never happened on them. They couldn't replicate it in all that they did. Personally, in my opinion, everything that we were originally having dealt with the pump shift. So the fact that that's working was probably in my mind the biggest thing. But they're pretty confident with the Cummins technician doing the change in the ECM and the update with the calibration that they think that's going to solve the speedometer issues that we were having. So unfortunately, time is going to tell. The only way to truly know is to put this thing in service. So that is why, when it came back, the first thing I wanted to make sure that it gets checked over by Fallsway, who's been working on this truck. It gets its annual PM done. It gets its annual pump test that I know it passes all of those. And then that'll give even our crews even more confidence that the truck's ready to go. So, we'll have to put it in service, and that's going to be the test, is to see what happens. They're very willing. They said anything happens, call us immediately, and they want to know about it, report it. They said they'll drive back down from Michigan to do whatever needs to be done on that. So they're still standing by it, which is good. Ultimately, the best end result for us is to get this truck operating and running safely for our crews.
Have you had any discussion about the warranty?
So,
the extension of the warranty?
So they did, yes, we did have that discussion. Anything that they have done in regards to all of this, yes, they are standing by that in their warranty moving forward.
And can I assume that you're probably going to use this truck a little bit more for training and daily activities?
It will be front, as soon as it comes back, all the equipment put back on it, it's going front line, and that's the plan.
Right.
It'll be out of Station 1, so it could get more use than if it was up at Station 2, yes.
Well, I'm asking for daily trainings and stuff, put it through its paces.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because you don't want it out there on the fire ground doing what it's done in the past.
We've got some newer members, so they have to go over everything with the trucks. This truck is going to be used for that, yes. I want to put it through its paces,
Yeah.
so.
That's the most important thing. If
Yeah.
it's going to fail, you've got to make it fail.
Yeah.
While it's in that warranty period.
Absolutely, and quite honestly, I'd rather, if it does fail, I'd rather fail at the station while we're doing training with it than on a scene.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, so I'm happy that it's back. I'm disappointed that it took this process, but the end result, the best result that we can get is to have the truck operating. So if that's what they fixed, it's working for us, that's the best result we can get.
So if you could please keep this on the agenda for next month.
Sure.
You can give us an update on
How it
after it
performed.
comes back. And,
Absolutely.
beating on it and, putting us through its paces.
Don't beat on it too much.
You know what I'm saying now.
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Jim?
I have none.
This moves us on to a very important discussion item, the Marks Radio Project update.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess before we get into the propagation studies, I don't know that the committee needs much of a recap in terms of what the project looks like, but obviously there's been ongoing radio issues reported by our officers, firefighters, paramedics, and we have been, I would say, significantly engaged with Marks over the last at least 2 years on trying to resolve this situation. During that process, while we were working on moving on the tower at First Energy, former safety director, now service director, Hiscock, had applied for the one-time capital grants at the state level. During that process, we had heard that we had been successful and were being awarded funds there. However, when the final list came out, we were not on that list. One of the things that I was tasked with in taking on the new position was to find out what the ultimate result of that was, and the ultimate result is while we did not receive the one-time funding, we actually got placed in the state's capital biennial budget. So there is $170,000 that is earmarked at DAS for a Marks radio tower project here in Wadsworth. So with that, we need to make a determination and make a decision on whether or not we accept those funds by October 1st. So we have a very short window to make that decision in. In order to help that decision, I requested several propagation studies from Marks to help us make the analysis. But I want to make sure the committee has a good understanding of what the overall project looks like before we get into those. So generally speaking, and I would preface this by saying that I have not engaged with any individual vendors or construction teams that would actually do this project. The numbers that I will provide in this discussion are based with our discussion with Marks. Marks is obviously engaged on their own in building towers. They're also engaged with other communities that have built towers and given them back to them. But I just want to be clear with everybody that these are approximate numbers that have been provided by Marks. So generally speaking, an entire all-in budget for a tower project is going to be around $1 million. Roughly half of that is going to be the actual cost of the tower, and then the other half of that is going to be the building that's located at the base of the tower, the building that contains the actual IT-related equipment that makes the tower run. So that's the building, the equipment inside the building. That building requires HVAC, it requires a generator, it requires propane for that generator. So that is roughly the other half of that cost. As we've been working with Marks, and DAS, and First Energy, in anticipation of that project, Marks has already either ordered or has received a lot of those items. The police department also was able to engage with Portage and Summit counties and able to obtain that internal IT equipment as well. So as we've had this discussion about possibly moving away from the First Energy Tower and doing our own build here in Wadsworth, Marks has said, if that is the decision that you make, we will bring that half of the equation for you. So we will bring the building, we will bring the HVAC, we will bring the generator, we will bring the propane, and you're already in possession of the internal components, the IT components that make it work. So what we would be talking about is the first half of the project, which is the architectural and environmental study that goes into that, the actual design of the tower, and then the actual construction of the tower itself. As you can imagine, there are different costs for different towers. And generally we're looking at a range, it depends on how high the tower is that you're going to use. So standard heights, 180, 250, 330, and even 400. I would tell the committee that 400 is not even worthy of our consideration. That is not what we need here in our location. And what I would believe is that the propagation studies would show us that 180-foot tower is going to get the job done for what we need in Wadsworth City, but also into the township for fire and EMS. So for a 180-foot tower, what we're looking at, rough cost from Marks, is $391,000. In addition to the tower itself, some expenses outside that $391 would include a $15,000 environmental study. We would also have to supply and build fencing and a driveway because they need site access. So I do not have estimates on those costs, but those are the rough numbers that we're
Those are
looking
minor
at.
costs.
Those are minor costs, yes. So what's important when we're evaluating this? One is site location, buildability on that site, and I will say that we have explored And looking to do our own, we've explored several sites. We've talked about Fire Station 2. It is at a high point in the city. It's property that we already control. We looked even a little bit at Valley View Park. There's a planned renovation for that park. We thought that might be a good time to coordinate those efforts. I would tell the committee, those aren't included on this at the presentation because the initial review from Marks was that site was not going to get done what we need to get done. The other site that we looked at is you have the Parsons, formerly Parsons Administrative Building, the old Overlook, the now Grizzly Academy. Directly behind that lot is an empty lot that the city used to have a water tower on, and the city still maintains control over that lot. So that was the other location that we had them run studies on as well too. I would tell the committee when evaluating Station 2, I generally have some concerns based on the footprint that we need for that site. They recommended essentially a 100-foot by 100-foot base. That would essentially eat up the entire rear parking lot and still maybe run into the water tower that's there as well too. While it wouldn't necessarily matter for in-city radio traffic, I would also be somewhat concerned about the radio tower being in such close proximity to the water tower and creating a shadow area. So given that, I would say a general rough idea of where we'd like to go is that lot behind the Parsons Administration Building, the Grizzly Academy. And I believe that that is, just from a general look through, probably roughly the second highest spot in the city, which is important because if you're starting at a higher elevation, when you put the tower on top of the higher elevation, you're gaining height that way as well too. I should have also led with this. I would very much like for this to be an open discussion because I think there's a lot of issues and it's a big decision in terms of both dollars, but also location and what that means for the community and what it means for our safety forces. So I will say, and I would bring it in front of the committee as well too, if that is ultimately the site that is selected, that essentially happens to be in the middle of a neighborhood. So I don't know how the citizens in that area would feel about a 180-foot steel structure going up in their neighborhood, but that would certainly be something for the committee to consider as we go through that.
But don't you agree that the safety of our safety forces personnel is paramount? That's got to be our number one
I do, and so
reasoning
I would
for
say,
location?
I would say it's twofold. It is both out of concern for the citizens and both out of concerns for our first responders. On the citizen side, our radio communication is vitally important. If we can't communicate, we can't respond, whether that's from a tactical law enforcement approach or whether that's from fire and EMS. And if we're talking about police intervention or fire and EMS intervention to respond to the safety of our citizens, we absolutely need that, and it is critical. From an officer's perspective, if I am engaged in a confrontation and I need backup, I want to be able to get out on the radio and get that backup started. If I am inside a resident's home, inside a building, and this is a full code and I need a manpower assist, if I can't get that out over the radio, no one else is coming. So yes, I think that is an excellent point. And then from my perspective, the driver of the entire project is that our citizens deserve our safety forces to have a robust communication system that we can use, and the members, police, fire, EMS, and even dispatch, because they're on the line too. When they can't reach an officer, they're sending officers out to check on that officer, and they feel that stress. So I think we owe it to all the safety forces to have a robust system that's in place.
100% agree with you. And it's been a problem for several years since we went to Marks. We knew the problem. We were researching solutions to the problem, but now it sounds like we've got $170,000 that we can get from the state and just piggy up a little bit more money, and we can have our own tower.
Now, I think it's also important for the committee to understand is that it is Mark's intent and could potentially be in the agreement language when we take the 170 is that Mark's wants us to sign over the tower and property to Mark's.
And it only makes sense to do that.
It does, and it's a good point. I think it's an important point to at least bring up and talk through, because as we have further discussions, I don't think it's typically common for the city to invest taxpayer dollars into an asset that we're not going to maintain an asset of this size and this cost, at least for a long period of time. Why is that? And I think it's important to cover that. Why is that? Is that Wadsworth as a community does not want to be in the tower maintenance business. We don't want to be in the tower insurance business. We want Marks to take on that responsibility moving forward because we don't want that responsibility. That means if there's weather damage, site damage, anything that happens, Marks is going to be the one that fixes that. It's not going to be the city that's responsible for maintaining it. I will also say too, and this is no secret, Marks is aware of this as well, the equipment that we have obtained from Summit and Portage County also has a shelf life. Motorola is not going to maintain that particular equipment forever, and that is looming as well too. While we valued that asset roughly at I think $60,000, to replace that asset with the new equipment, I think we are talking about at least 100, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace that equipment. That also becomes Marks' responsibility. So I think that while it may sound counterintuitive that we're making an investment in an asset for the city that we're then immediately going to turn around and give control over to someone else, it does make sense because long-term there are serious cost implications in maintaining that tower, and we don't want to be the ones responsible for it. Chiefs, I will let you weigh in as well too from your perspectives, if you have anything else to add. And again, I would invite the committee to ask questions that either you believe citizens might have, or your peers on council may have as well too. Even if we don't have the answer for you today, I think it's an important part of that discussion going forward in terms of what are we looking at from a potential upfront cost, but what does this mean to our safety forces long term?
Well, I believe the true asset is the safety and welfare of our residents and our first responders. That's just a piece of equipment that could be replaced. To me, investing, whether it's $1 million, $1.5 million into our residents and our safety forces and our first responders and our dispatchers for the good of the community, that's the asset we're talking about. That piece of equipment isn't really an asset to us. My other thought was, there's been a water tower there in the past. There's been, when people, and maybe this is wrong, when people bought their homes years ago, there was a water tower there. The city owned that land. We don't have the water tower there anymore. We got to put something up. And that site is there. I just think it makes absolute sense to protect 25,000 people in this community and those who serve us. And I'd be willing to write a check right now.
I would say, sorry, go ahead, Chief.
I just,
It's a no-brainer.
That's the asset.
I just want, even with this tower, we are still not going to be 100%. And I want to make sure that you and the committee knows that just because we're putting a tower, it is going to improve dramatically what we need, but it's not going to be 100%.
There's no system 100%.
Right. I want to make sure that everybody knows that.
95% is the best you can hope for.
Yes.
That's the best you can hope for with any radio communication system.
Yes.
There's going to be that 5%. But right now, what percentage would you give our current system?
Well, I will, in a moment here, I can show you what our current coverage map is, but Chief and I were talking, because he pulled out the maps that they had from, I think, 2019 or 2020 when they looked. And again, it's important to note that when we look at the projected, so there'll be three that you can see. The M is for mobile, PIS is portable in-street, and then portable in-building, PIB. As it relates to this project, they only work in one direction. If you have portable in-building, you have portable in-street, and you have mobile coverage. So that's really all I've been focused on because that's the difference maker. When we looked at that initial study from Marks, we know in that map that there are areas that they said on the map that there is portable in-building coverage. Either chief could tell you, we know that even within that area, we know for a fact that we don't have portable in-building coverage in that area. So the map is not exact. It is it's a propagation study. They did not go into every single building and every single house to confirm that. It is their best estimate based on those.
And it's computer generated.
And it's computer generated, yes. Chief Dorland, did you have something you were looking down initially on?
The only thing I would add is you gave some good examples as far as why it's important to have good radio coverage. But when we're looking at, worst case scenarios, the schools, the big box stores, places that are challenging for radio coverage now because of the structure of the building, the number of internal rooms, the prospect of what could happen in these different areas. Having a tower in the city is going to be vital, and it's going to give us really good coverage in a lot of these challenging areas. So we train for a lot of these situations that may occur in a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Kohl's, and of course in the schools. And having a tower within 1 to 2 miles from any location in the city is going to give us excellent coverage in these very challenging buildings.
I will say, I think it's important, and Mr. Chairman, based on your questions, I think you understand that I have an opinion on the matter, but I think it is worth discussing is that an option is to continue at First Energy, because you'll see on the maps that First Energy does provide good coverage. If we want to move forward with First Energy, the plan would be to not accept the $170,000 and to walk away from that. Marks, then the ball would shift from us to Marks and First Energy. There are some concerns even going forward with the project at First Energy, but I do bring this up because if I were a citizen or anybody else and I was looking at the project and I said, well, wait a minute, Mr. Director, if you don't spend any dollars and walk away from the 170 and they put this up at First Energy, you're still going to have really, really good coverage. Why don't you do that? Isn't that the most economical, wisest thing to do? I would counter that, or at least bring up for discussion with the committee, is that I don't know that it is, because number one, the tower at First Energy has already failed its structural assessment. It is not in the right condition for Marks to go up on it. There's been some talk that it does need, anywhere from an estimate of $30,000 to $90,000 in repairs. I have some questions about the estimate because the report wasn't given to Marks, so we don't know what the extent of the structural issues are. The tower itself is already at or very nearly approaching what Marks would consider a useful tower life. First Energy also was not willing to provide automatic site access to Marks employees. So when we sign up for Marks, Marks promises us in return, if a tower goes down, if a site goes down, we will be on site this quickly, we will have it back up and running this quickly. Well, if they have to depend on getting site access from a third party, they don't like that. I think they might still be willing to pursue this, but the other aspect is when we lose control over the project, then it's on Marks' schedule, and it's on First Energy's schedule, and as a committee, we've been having this discussion for at least 2 years, and we don't have any equipment on the tower, no repairs have been made, and we're not, while we might technically be closer, we're not up.
And
The other thing is that we're dealing with someone who is shepherding this project from Marks that is a DeWine appointee, and there's time on the clock from that standpoint too. So if we don't get the project done and we don't have success with it within the next year, we could effectively be back at square one. And now we don't have access to the $170,000. So while I do have an opinion, I am also trying to play devil's advocate and make sure that all of the facts and all of this is presented fairly so that not only you as a committee can consider that, but potentially council as a body can.
well, I think, just past history with First Energy and everything, why would we want to go in to First Energy agreement when we can have our own tower given to Marks to maintain, access, everything we need is there? Okay.
In addition to that, if other entities wish to go on the tower, so if a cell provider, for example, wants to go on that tower, and if it's a benefit for them, they will enter into a lease agreement with Marks, and Marks will split that revenue with the city 50-50. So while I can't guarantee that as soon as it goes up, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile are all going to be on there, I just do mention that it is a possibility, and the agreement with Marks would be a 50-50 split.
I would probably bet you Verizon's the first one because it's a real bad problem on the east side of town. It's a major communication problem.
What other benefits does Marks get by owning the tower? What's their, why do they want to own the tower and take all that risk, replace all that equipment? You had mentioned useful life of the tower, so when the tower, what is the useful life of the tower?
We're talking 20, 25 years. I think it's 25
So
years.
they replace it then? Would that be on them to replace
They're
it?
they're responsible for that maintenance and upkeep. So if they decide it's still in good shape and passes
Yeah.
their structural test, that they can continue to go forward.
I'd say it's control for their entire system.
It's a statewide
It's-
system.
It's gonna benefit us, but it also benefits other Marks users. I mean, we get probably the biggest benefit, but it will benefit other Marks users. So by them owning it, they have the control of that for their entire system statewide.
And they want control of the tower site because it gives them better security. I know that's typically why they won't join other towers, because then you have multiple people accessing the site, and they want to be able to tell us as an end user, your site is secured. We build towers to this standard, class 3, so it's, I don't know the specifics, but that it can resist heavy winds and heavy ice and snow and everything else. They want other users to say and know, we build towers to this standard. We maintain them. They're secure, which is essentially really important from a law enforcement perspective, that they'll be responsive when they go down, when there's issues, when there's radio coverage issues. It does expand the network. I don't know to what extent Marks gets a coverage benefit out of this. As the committee knows from prior discussions, so Medina County is unique in that Wadsworth and Brunswick are on the Marks radio system, but the remainder of our county is on Marks' competitor, the Harris system. Those have also joined. They've at least now put Marks in their portables because they know that that's your statewide emergency channels. So when we have our large-scale events or statewide responses, that's what they're going to go on. They've also put those Marks channels in their portables so that when they're down here, Medina County SO is our biggest mutual aid partner. So when they're coming down here to Wadsworth, they can at least change their portable to communicate with us directly. I think it does start to move some coverage into Medina County. I have a belief, but I don't have this, from them directly, but I think they would like to improve their coverage in Medina County so that they could be they could get more of a market share in Medina County and try to win that over. I would say also, from looking at just this one project is not going to be enough for them to do that. They'd have to make other investments in the county to make it worthwhile for them. So.
And who negotiates the deal with Marks? Is that you?
It has been me to this point. And so I guess this is a two-part process. One is the decision, do we take the $170,000? That's part and parcel of the first decision that needs to get made. Once that happens, then that essentially is the signal to me and to Marks that yes, now we're going to take ownership of this project. So now we need to work out what the rest of those specifics are. But yes, it's been myself and Angie Canepa, who is a DAS, who is the appointee, and that's where we sort of reached the agreement to say, if you take the 170 and you're willing to take on that half of the project, we will essentially bring the other half of the project to bear in form of the building, generator, HVAC, propane, and those things, because we've already essentially started to make those plays for you for the first energy tower, and if that doesn't work out, we can just transfer those assets to here. And so we'll meet you halfway, you get the 170 to help your half, and that's what the agreement essentially looks like. Again, if we were doing it all on our own, I would forecast that it would at least be about $1 million project.
What kind of time frame if we do something? Are we up in a year? Are we up in 2 years? Or up and running? How long?
That's a great question. So, as you may or may not imagine, my question was, how fast could we make this happen if we made it happen? We could, in all likelihood, but if, I'm sure the committee is familiar with how construction design projects go and those processes that are involved in that. If the project were to go step A to step B to step C as it's planned, we could potentially break ground next year, maybe early to late spring. That is if we take the 170 now and we're able to quickly put it to use. The first step would be engaging, they use a firm, they call it an A&E study. It's an architectural and environmental study. So they would have to come out and take soil samples, look at the actual lot itself, and then start that design process. There's also that $15,000 environmental study that I referred to. Basically, between the two, they need to take steps like to make sure that it doesn't impact migratory bird patterns. They have to put out notices to Indian tribes to make sure that this was not, part of, burial ground and those things. And some of that is literally just waiting 90 days to hear back from those folks. The time it takes to do the study and everything else. If we were able to begin that this year, allow those waiting periods to happen over the winter when we can't have construction taking place anyways, I think that would be the best use of that time. Once we have a design, we'd have to put that out to bid. It sounds like, generally speaking, there's 2 contractors primarily in that market that they deal with, but we would have to engage in the bid process with them and set that up, and then obviously find out when those particular firms would actually be able to take on the project. But if we accepted the money, we're able to finish up the rest of our process and planning, which some of that is going to come during the budget cycle because, okay, well, we're talking about the 170 that we might be able to use initially in terms of those studies. Well, let's say there's $300,000 remaining on the rest of the project. That's got to come from somewhere. And so that probably needs to be a part of our budget process this year to forecast. And maybe we could better shape that process by engaging with some of those firms initially to say, look, I know you don't have our specific design, but firm A, what does it cost to build a class 3 Marks radio tower? You've built it before. Can you tighten up that 391 for me? Hey, firm that does the studies. Hey, I was told it costs this. What does it cost right now? What are you forecasting for potential material costs to change in the next year? And that could be a big factor as well too. And admittedly, we need to do that. We've had these initial conversations with Marks, but the first big decision is do we take the 170? We have 2 years to spend that. I think for sure we could get it done in the 2-year time frame. Do I want to take 2 years? No, I think I owe it to the officers, firefighters, paramedics that are on the road right now to get it done as soon as possible. But as I sit here right now, I can tell you the conversations that we had with Marks and DAS to say, Angie, if I wanted to do it now, when could I break ground? And that discussion was early to late spring. Am I promising the committee that? No. But that's effectively what that looks
So
like.
you can only go on what you're told.
Exactly. And,
Because the design process and everything.
in fairness, it doesn't make sense
There's a lot
for
of
me to go
variables
out to those folks now and say, hey, we're doing this, when in a week we could say, no, we're not doing this. And I think there needs to be some conversations with finance, and I've started those as well too, is, whether the project is done with cash or whether it's done with debt, that needs to be a discussion as well too. Can you have a debt without an asset? And I think that is possible, but we need to work through some of those channels as well too. I think those are important discussions to have as well, given the dollar.
But basically, the decision on whether or not to accept the 170,000 needs to be made at next week's council.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
So I think you're going to have to be prepared to give a presentation to all of council when, if we're asking them to vote on.
And I can show the committee the maps as well too while we're here.
We waited too long for this.
And hopefully if I use this microphone, it counts as the audio.
Yeah, it's on. You may want to knock the lights down up there.
As I say, Lieutenant, do you mind working the light?
So we just did it.
Yeah, that's right.
So for the committee's benefit, this is what the current coverage map looks like, and this is an overlay of the following towers you can see here in the legend. So this is including And this is portable in-building for reference. So this is what our current portable in-building coverage looks like. This is including towers from Summit County, Clinton, Marshallville, Ackerman, and Medina. I would just say for our own personal reference, and Chief Dorland could speak to this too, that Medina tower is rarely, if ever, in play. It does not provide good coverage for our location. But this is, so green is obviously good. This is what our portable in-building coverage looks like at the moment. And you can see there are several areas that are not in green, and I would also just advise the committee again that there are areas included in there that we know did not have coverage now. I am happy to zoom in or out if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's better. But it looks like you've got most of Wadsworth Township in the green. I mean, because it's a Guilford line, now that being white. But to the east, you've got, I mean, spotty, but.
Spotty, but yeah, that's where we're picking up the current Summit County system.
Right.
So any immediate questions, or you want to keep looking at this? You want me to
Drum roll.
drum roll? So you can see on there, the folks at Marks also have a sense of humor. So when we were looking at, they found out that we were the Wadsworth Grizzlies, so they nicknamed the Parsons Education Building the Grizzly Adams location. So I can rename these for a more formal presentation next week, but some of these just came in yesterday. So I will start with Grizzly Academy. So the red is the coverage that the Grizzly Academy Tower would provide us. The green is existing, so the combo between both would be what an all-in network would look like if we were on that site.
Now, is this PIB?
This is also PIB, portable in-building.
Okay.
So you can essentially see there are a couple of white spots here and here, but those areas that were in the white are now in the red. And at 180 feet, there's still a little red or a little white down here. And I think this area, which is actually mostly just a farm field over here. And this is a tricky spot off of Mennonite. There's essentially 3 hills that come together in one location, but that's primarily one farm field over there. But that's what the coverage looks like with a 180-foot tower inside our jurisdiction. I can also show you them individually, but just as a point of reference. So the first energy tower is at 390 feet. It's an exceptionally tall tower. One of my frustrations with the map is that there's already space occupied at 390, so we wouldn't necessarily get 390 off of that tower. But this is what First Energy would look like as well. So it is also a legitimately very good location for us and speaks to the initial target project being that location, because it does also accomplish a great deal in terms of radio coverage for us.
Is that a hole out there on Broad Street? It's white. Oh, no, that was your pointer, okay.
Yep, sorry, that's just my mouse.
Yep. It just got painted. I've seen enough. I'm convinced.
If you're interested, I can show you the individuals at the different mobiles in street, in building, but again, just from my perspective, the only ones that I'm focused on are portable in building, because it's only going to get better from there. But this is what just the one tower at the Grizzly Academy. This is the in-building coverage of just that tower by itself.
And look how far it goes. I mean, that goes all the way into Britain almost.
It actually does.
It's
It makes its
full
way
coverage.
up into Medina.
Yeah.
It obviously has a lot of overlap into Summit County.
Yeah.
It goes down towards Rittman, but where I have been focused, I mean, you can see kind of the city outline, and you can even see the township outline, and that's providing, at that location, 180 feet. That's what that one tower brings to the table, and then you saw it with the overlay with the red. And again, if the committee, I can show you all the different ones that we have. I'm happy to go through those. If I can-
I think I've seen enough to make my decision. I'm good. John, you okay?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else you want to see before I relegate myself back to the table?
No, I think you did a real good job proving your points. So basically, I think what we need then is a motion to agree to accept the $170,000 and start the process to locate a Marks Tower at the overlook site, or I call it the overlook site, because that's what it was always called. Okay?
Yep, I think, yeah, it basically would be, we'd be looking for, and again, I saw a draft late this afternoon, but I'd like a chance to make sure we go through and everything is situated, so I do not have it in front of you right now,
Could you
but
bring it out to the committee before next Tuesday night?
yes,
Okay.
yes. I think with some, a look again tomorrow and maybe a couple quick follow-up conversation, we'd be able to do that.
I'd like to make a motion that we move the acceptance of the $170,000 on to council on Tuesday night with the suspension of the rules, and let us get this project going and keep our community and our responders safe.
I'll
Do I hear a
that.
second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And suspend the rules and
Yep.
get the project moving.
Is there anything else that you, as the committee members, want to see, or any questions that we haven't talked through tonight that you would like to see?
I'd like for you to be here Tuesday night, so if there's any questions from other council members.
Absolutely,
But,
yes.
I mean, maybe just throw up the first drawing that you put up,
A second.
and then the second one, okay? And I mean, that's pretty proving right there, what it's gonna do for, communications.
And the legislation for next week is really for the acceptance of the
For the acceptance
170,000.
That's
of the
first step,
That's
right?
just, that's all we're voting on
It's
next.
Right.
literally to say, I'm going to turn around, fill out the paperwork, send it back to DAS. DAS will send us the funds, and that's it. That's all that is. And then from there, we can get into the nitty-gritty of engaging the A&E firm and
Just like any other
Just
city
like any
project.
other-
Is there a length of time that those funds have to be spent by?
2
Obviously,
years. 2 years. Yep. And we would have to come up with a rough project goal for them that's a part of the application to receive the funds. My assessment from
But
talking
the
to
October
DAS.
1st deadline, we need to suspend the rules and
Yes.
pass it Tuesday night,
Yes.
so that we don't
And
pass
then
it.
obviously, this would be an ongoing discussion with you as a committee, but also as it gets to those larger,
Yep.
that's going to be a full council discussion anyways before we make those next steps.
Yep. Okay. Takes care of that. Next thing on our agenda is going to be the Blue Tip Memorial Park speed limits.
I will try to make this one brief, but we had discussed, I think via email when we did not have our last meeting, but we needed some data to gather for that for an engineering firm as it relates to the speed limit and those. We did consult with an engineering firm. They were allowing us to collect our data on our own using the Your Speed signs. So that data has been collected. Spoke to Engineer Davis, and he is engaging, and I'm waiting to have a call scheduled with myself, Engineer Davis, and that firm to review that data, and then hopefully have a formal recommendation from them to solidify potential legislation for Memorial and Blue Tip Park for the speed limits there.
Okay. Questions?
I have none.
Okay, we'll move on to the traffic calming devices speed table discussion.
So we have talked about this a little bit at the committee, and so traffic calming devices essentially is the general category term for either improvements to the roadway or other devices that can help reduce speed in certain areas. The one that we have been discussing and giving a lot of thought to in particular is a speed table. Speed table is not a hump or bump, but it has a graduated angled lead up and then essentially a table size that would fit a normal vehicle, both axles simultaneously. But it is less impactful on regular vehicles. It's also less impactful on emergency vehicles that are in responses. And in looking at that further, we are trying to narrow down. We've gotten a lot of complaints on Summit Street that we've discussed, and also just in general, but also especially since the repaving, West Street has become a targeted area as well too. So before considering where they go and what a rollout looks like, and I guess for the committee, what we're talking about is they have what I would refer to as a temporary or a movable speed table. So it's made out of rubber. We can select a location for it. We can essentially attach it with bolts to the roadway. That would allow us to try it in a location. It would allow us to move it into a location if we wanted to. But another important benefit of that is that during the winter season, you have plows. You don't want to damage the plows or damage this. We could actually remove them for the winter season. We could essentially caulk those holes in the roadway and have them free rein for plows during the winter season, and then be able to put it back and replace it. A city that's done this recently is Massillon. I spoke to Massillon's mayor. He was a big believer in the project on the front end, but has also seen what he has relayed has been good results. But in researching this further, there's a lot of communities that have done this. Akron has done this, Cleveland has done this, and there's a whole series of consideration that DOT wants you to make sure that you're doing before you assign these locations. And as a part of that process, it's also going to be an engineering opinion as to have we evaluated all of the right things. Traffic counts, they have to be below a certain number. Curves are a concern, road grade is a concern. Driveway density, because you don't want a driveway coming out onto the table. With this one in particular, you don't want it in an intersection. You want to make sure you have enough room for the intersection. When you place it, you have to have appropriate road markings and signage distances prior to that. So there's a lot of things to consider. And a part of that data gathering is also, and this makes total sense, what are your current speeds? And then if you install this, what are your speeds after installation? Otherwise, it's just going to be me out there saying, yeah, it seems like cars are going slower. I like these speed tables. But you need to collect data before and after. And so that's the part of the process that we're in right now, is we're in that data collection. So at the end of last week into Monday, we were collecting data on one location on West Street. We have signs up at the north end of West Street now. And potentially by the end of the week, we will move them to Summit Street and check locations there. We did just some initial test drives to identify places in the road where you naturally catch yourself driving faster. We also were trying to make some observations on traffic just anecdotally. Is the traffic going faster than us, slower than us, the same speed than us? And that's how we sort of focused in on those locations. We're going to confirm that data with the Your Speed sign, and then using that data, hopefully say, okay, of these 3 or 4 spots we've selected, we have factual data that says this is where we see the highest speeds, this is where we see the highest average speeds, this is where we see the highest 85th percentile speeds. And then we can engage with the engineering firm to say, this is our target location. Do you confirm that this is the right place to put this? Potentially, the concept could be up either close to the end of the year. The only thing I'm careful of is I don't want to put it up for about a week in November and then have to take it down for December. But it is possible we might be able to at least get it purchased and in. But that's where that project's at. Those are the steps that we're taking to try to narrow down those locations so that we could potentially start with one, check the data, see what kind of reductions we get, and then we could have the follow-up discussions of, if it's West and Summit, those are long cut-through streets. So I don't think, anecdotally, that one table is going to solve all of the problems on West or Summit. So how many do you need? Do you need 2? Do you need 3? What does that look like? And I think that's an important part of the process. There is a cost associated with the tables. I mean, we're looking at roughly $10,000 for one, and by one I mean both sides of the roadway to do that. As we gather this data, I think we could also in the future consider moving from the temporary to an actual installed concrete table. I think we could work around it with the plows, and there's some steps, and in Cleveland's finding, that was their recommendation. They tried both during their experimental period, and their recommendation was to move with the actual concrete. Massillon seems very happy with the rubber, and they're going to continue, I think, with that direction. But I also think that as that data comes in and as we see what the impacts are, we then need to take some steps as a city to say, okay, what would our implementation policy be going forward? Because if they are effective, I could see lots of people wanting them in their streets, in their neighborhoods, but I don't think it's reasonable for us to say, well, we're going to put 2 on every street in Wadsworth and then have 20,000 per street. That's not an investment we want to make, so we need to set some parameters. They need to be realistic. I think identifying these major cut-throughs as a first step is probably the right move, and we can grow or stop the program from there. Something else to consider too is that obviously we're drilling holes in our roadway and installing, uninstalling, and reinstalling, and so we've engaged the street department, but I think the maintenance of our roadway is something that needs to be considered with this project as well too. So I don't want to come out saying that, you know, by the end of next year or 2 years from now, there's just speed. I don't want to become the speed table capital of Ohio. But I think there's a reasonable measured approach that we can take in this process, and just wanted to update the committee on where we are in that process. So happy to answer any questions or if there's concerns. Like I said, hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have that data collected and then I can talk to engineers.
I was going to say, didn't you send it off to a company to say that
that's the idea.
Criteria?
That's the idea, is that, hey, I want to have some speed data as a part of that discussion. You know, I know as it is on West Street, I know Chief Dorland has had extra patrols and enforcements there, but it's not always a permanent solution to speed. The officers are not omnipresent. They can't be, they never will be. And so while we might mitigate traffic for the half an hour that we sit there, we need to look at some other solutions that reasonably reduce traffic, especially in these cut-throughs that are also in neighborhoods, because there's a danger to the kids and families that are walking through there. And I think this is, the other cities that have done this, the other studies that I've read, they see marketed decreases in speed at those locations. I think our big question will be, how many does it take to control this roadway?
Sounds like a good program to, you know, proceed with to me. So, okay. Next thing on our agenda then is abatement of a nuisance, demolition of structures.
So I believe it was 2 meetings ago, we had a lengthy discussion on the abatement of nuisance properties and council's role in that process. Mr. Copley brought up a good point that we necessarily don't just want to be the only one at that table saying this nuisance needs to be abated. And as it relates specifically to a property that we are currently engaged with, which is 179 Grandview, I think the committee is probably familiar with that property and may have even driven by or received complaints directly from constituents. Our code enforcement officer has already made the initial posting, the list of the exterior nuisances that were found, and indicated that we were going to pursue an abatement of this property if they were not corrected, or if at an appeals board hearing, he did not come with a concrete plan to address and mitigate those issues. That was the city's action on our own. As that process began, we also pursued consent to inspect the interior of the home. That consent was denied. And last week, our code enforcement officer, with the assistance of the police department and law department, obtained an administrative search warrant for the property and conducted that administrative search warrant on the property last Friday. That administrative search warrant was conducted with the assistance of the police department, the fire department, and the Medina County Health Department. Chief, I could let you, as the one who did the inspection, if you want to provide any information, but I would say that if the outside was any indicator as to what the conditions were on the inside, I would say that the inside is probably even worse than what you would expect. There were numerous fire code violations. I have not seen the health department's report yet, but believe that there are numerous health code violations in there. So the appeals board hearing is scheduled for Monday. Mr. Poling will have an opportunity to present his case to the appeals board. Our code enforcement officer will have an opportunity to present the city's position on the matter, and then all those affected by the code enforcement officer's decision, aka neighbors, will also have an opportunity to present to the appeals board. If the appeals board denies his appeal, then that would put us in the position to placard and condemn that property, and that will trigger the next aspect of this process, which will likely involve council. So that is where we were at on the process. Obviously, we would not know the appeals board decision until after Monday, but when that happens, we can communicate that, and then we can start to get into the next steps, which will likely involve, the utilities are already off, but will likely involve some inspections, asbestos checking, things like that, and perhaps going out to quote for what it would look like to abate that property and remove all of the material from that property. But then we can also engage council on the remaining part of that. So that's where we're at in that process as well.
So the neighbors will be notified that they have a right to come speak also?
There are 2 neighbors, same house, that have repeatedly been engaging myself and the code enforcement officer, and they asked that specific question. I responded to them over the weekend and indicated that yes, they have a right to be at that hearing, and that if they wanted to share that news with their neighbors, they could share that news, and that they would also have the right as well. So if the committee members have been contacted by a citizen that is in that vicinity, if you still are in contact with them, you can encourage them to reach out to the code enforcement. Off the top of my head, I don't know the time of the hearing. I know it's during the business day on Monday, but it'll be Monday.
Good. Thank you.
Good. Okay, the next one is the ARPA retention grant repayment.
As the committee was aware, in 2022, the police department applied for and was awarded a number of grants that were paid for by ARPA funds that were given to the state and that the state distributed. One of those grants in particular was a retention program grant that we got. And the idea was that based on those rules, we could offer officers and dispatchers up to 10% of their annual salary as a one-time bonus or as a bonus in order to retain that employee. We accepted that grant. We paid out those bonuses. As a part of that, we had to provide them with a payback plan if they were to leave to be in compliance with the grant. Those were presented to all of the officers and dispatchers. Those were signed. Unfortunately, we did have 4 members leave under that time frame. 3 of those were officers, 1 of those was a dispatcher. In some of those instances, when those employees left, they were just able to make those payments from their vacation and sick banks that they were either in retirement or leaving. They were able to make those payments. In a few other cases, we had to put people on essentially a payment plan to pay those back. But what I am bringing to your attention, and I will likely be in conjunction with Auditor Fix, bringing the actual legislation, so it may not be at the next meeting, but likely one after that, will be, we have those funds that have been paid back to the city. I now have to pay those funds back to the state. The grant is closed out. Those funds have come in other accounts and are used for a different purpose, and so it requires an actual appropriation from council for me to be able to do that. So just for the committee's benefit, when you see that, the number that was from finance was $19,778.91.
Any questions on that, gentlemen? It only makes sense we've got to give the money back if we didn't use it.
No, and I don't know if obviously, that was not the intent of the program.
Right.
And, would say that I was glad that we got to do that, but not with our dollars to make that happen, so.
Questions?
I'm good.
Yeah, just, bring that legislation forward. Next one is crosswalk discussion, Reimer and State Road.
Mr. Chairman or Councilman, if you
Yeah,
want to.
I was contacted by residents that would like to see a crosswalk put in at Reimer, across Reimer from State so they can access Walmart, Home Depot. Also, they said it'd be nice to have a crosswalk, and I forget what the first street is, north of Reimer.
Stop.
Okay, from Stauffer to get over to State. Don't know the feasibility of that. We do have more people living in that area, more people walking, wanting to access the area, so I'd like to see what we have to do, if we have to do a traffic, I'm sure that's a traffic study. It's a DOT issue.
So, yeah, I can speak to the issue because recently we had a similar discussion about 2 locations on Broad Street. So what we're essentially talking about, especially on the Reimer side, is a mid-block crosswalk. And so what I would say is that generally speaking, crossing pedestrian traffic is happening at an intersection. That's where motorists expect it to be happening. It's also where pedestrians expect it to be happening. There are a couple schools of thought or theories on this, but one is to try to force pedestrians to those intersections because of those general expectations, and generally speaking, it is safer because of those general expectations and traffic flow. However, there is a school of thought that says also, well, if people are just naturally crossing in large numbers at these mid-block locations, you may need to evaluate whether or not you put in a crosswalk there. When you're talking about the mid-block crosswalk, you're also talking about increased risk because 1, it's outside of that normal traffic pattern scope. 2, and this sounds somewhat counterintuitive, but I think the logic makes sense, is that when you're implementing a mid-block crosswalk, you're painting the crosswalk on the roadway. What are you telling the pedestrian? You're telling the pedestrian that this is safe. You're probably complementing those lines on the roadway with, at a minimum, a crosswalk sign. Common sense, how many motorists are realistically paying attention to all the signs at a location? Given distracted driving, given just their normal commutes, they're not paying attention to it. So what, in effect, you are potentially doing, and this is not to say that it can't be done, but what you are potentially doing is putting more confidence into the pedestrian and actually, counterintuitively, putting them at more risk because of the manner in which you did it. So when you do that, then you need to look at, are there other methodologies that you can use to make this safer? If you looked at the downtown improvement project, you'll notice those curb bump outs at the crosswalks. That's designed to bring people out of the sidewalk area, maybe past in the downtown, parked cars, so they become more visible, so they're more visible to the motorists, the motoring public. It's also a physical obstruction that comes out into the road, which is eye-catching and something that you're going to pay attention to if you see those curbs come out. Another option might be what's referred to as the RRFB. There's the most common one I can think of is the one that's on Silver Creek, and that's when you activate the lights, they flash. That's not an actual traffic signal. I think we may have had the discussion here at the committee, but it's a traffic warning device. So from an enforcement perspective, it's only live when somebody is in that crosswalk. But that can be a good tool. When you evaluate those, the other aspect of that is great. Well, is this location appropriate for that? And if by that being activated and by people waiting to cross, do you cause backups? And that's what the discussion on Broad was, is okay, depending on where this is located, do you cause an accidental backup if everybody just has free reign to come up, hit this button, activate the lights, and stop traffic? Or does that require some programming and timing as well, too? So I would say with all of those factors going into it, if we're going to explore creating a new, granted, we have mid-block crosswalks right now in the community, but if we're going to go forward and put in a new one, then I don't just want to be Director Chafin that says this is where it's appropriate to go. I do think, to your point, that that's where we might need to engage a traffic study to say, is this an appropriate spot? And if you think it's an appropriate spot, what other measures are required to make that happen? At that Reimer and Salwa, for example, there's no sidewalk on the other side of the road, so that could be a part of it. The RRFB, just a rough estimate, you're talking about $12,000, $13,000, and then additional maintenance in the future potentially. So those also, just as the speed tables we discussed, there is also a cost with those.
And I also realize that, we're looking at that intersection already.
Yes.
It'd be counterintuitive to do something now and then tear it back out.
Yes.
So I want to put it out there for discussion. Residents have asked me about it, and I said I would bring it. I actually asked several of them to come. As I always do when they have an issue, I ask them to come to committee and speak to us. And unfortunately, nobody showed up tonight.
On the state road side, I would also add too that it is not uncommon, Chief or Lieutenant, if you wanted to contribute, but there are high speeds on state road. It's
that's terrible
55
high
out
up
in the
there.
township, and just because there's a 35-mile-an-hour sign does not mean people are paying attention to that. You also have that hill as you come up on that approach, and so I would think that roadway grading, site issues would all be a part of that, and I think, Councilman, you make a very good point. I know that we've engaged a firm to look at that entire intersection, High, Reimer, State. I think depending on what their recommendations are, if that leads to the next step as an actual design process, then I think that would be the opportune time is to say, okay, we've also heard that there may be this issue. What can we do from a pedestrian standpoint at this location that's safe and efficient and still accomplishes what we want? So I hope that's answered the questions.
It does,
I do not have an immediate answer for you, but that's what that process
I
is.
promised my constituents that I would bring it up tonight because I felt it was more of a safety than a public waste situation. And I want them to know that we're here and we are discussing it. And there is a plan in the future, maybe not as quick as they want, like many things. Thank you.
Next thing on our agenda then is the traffic issue at Lincoln School. Mr. Rosberg.
Again, I drive Lyman Street a lot. The traffic with the kids getting picked up has gotten horrendous, and just the other day I had a nightmare situation. Parents coming down from 261, lined up. I was about the 5th car back, going north because somebody wanted to turn left into the school parking lot. The woman behind me got a little excited and started coming around. At the same time, a big dump truck came from the north and around all those parents, and it was a standoff. She wouldn't back up, and he couldn't back up. And I'm just wondering, with all the drop-offs, and that school is a little different than Overlook. It's different than Isham. It's different than Franklin and Valley View because that's a very narrow street. Is it possible that we mark that there are no left turns coming from the north into the school parking lot during drop-off and pickup time? Make the parents come from the north and line it down because you can't get through there. If we had an emergency, you can't get a vehicle through. And it's been an ongoing problem for years, but that one the other day was really scary because the truck kept moving and they were going to butt heads. And I'm like, she wasn't going to win. But it's a bad situation, and trying to think logically, what's the best way to solve it? Keep the northbound lane clear.
Yes.
I don't know if we can do that or not.
So, interesting question on the signage. Chief Dordan and I had some discussions yesterday after talking to Chairman Copley about that. I don't have an immediate enforcement solution for you yet, but also talked to Superintendent Hill today. He contacted his staff at the school. They were aware of the exact incident that you're bringing to the committee's attention tonight. So one of our SROs, that school principal, they have reached out and had communication to include maps with routes, and you cannot turn left when you're picking up or dropping off your kids. You need to come from the north and enter the parking lot from that area. So I would say in terms of short term, not only are we aware of it now, but the schools were already aware of it, and they are trying through their means of communication to drive that point home to the parents. Chief Dorland and I can continue to explore if there's signage available or if there's some other aspect we could take. The closest thing we found yesterday, I think, was a parking ordinance, which, while possible, just sounds odd to me that I would be issuing a parking ticket for stopping or standing to someone who's actually driving their car, but we might be able to explore that or other options with the law office. So I will follow up, Chief can follow up on that from an enforcement perspective, and we'll try to continue to work the communications with the parents' perspective on that end to try to get a better resolution to this situation.
Because we do allow parking on the north side, and that's already an issue on Lyman Street. And I know we can't, it'd be very challenging to say no street parking on Lyman because there are several shared driveways.
Shared driveways, rentals, short driveways, it's complicated too. So I think that might have some resistance from our constituents as well.
Right,
too.
but just in my, trying to use some common sense, it would make sense, no left turns, because nobody's
Yes.
willing to let the next person in.
Yep, and that's what the schools are trying to communicate to the parents to help on that side of it. So I will see if we can find a violation or something that we can explore. But yes, we'll continue to keep an eye on that.
Thank you.
Or with the schools addressing it may help.
I think so. I hope so.
I think-
But the councilman makes a good point. It's
Yeah.
not like this is the first year that this has ever been an issue.
No, it's been an
But-
issue forever.
But new parents, new year, all that, but hopefully that does help.
That brings us to other. We'll start with Chief Chafin.
Just a reminder, swearing in of the new firefighter.
Director Chafin, I apologize.
I do the same thing still.
New firefighter swearing in will be here in the council chambers, 3 p.m. on Thursday. We'll also, in conjunction with that, I think that's it's a special day for this new member becoming on because it's also the 24th anniversary of September 11th. So I think it's fitting that we have the swearing in for a new member of our fire service that's going to be on that day. So again, if you're more than welcome to attend. Nothing further.
Chief Linder.
I want to thank all the other fire departments, our personnel. Last week, including this Sunday, we've had some big fires on that. So I just appreciate all the assistance from not only city departments, streets, police, water, fire departments. We had people dropping off food and water for us as well. So just want to thank everybody that was involved. Our crews did an amazing job. A lot of them were on the same fires, some individuals. So I know they are extremely tired. They did an amazing job. So proud of them on that. And then Fire Prevention Week's October 5th through the 11th. So I just want to let people know about that as well. So that's it.
Chief Dorland.
Nothing to add.
Mr. Yearger.
Nothing for me.
Mr. Roster.
I've always got one more thing. I was just wondering, I know in the past the fire department has little plastic helmets they give out to kids. We've had first aid kits and things. What does the police department have to give out to kids when the officers are in a situation? You know, I know they've had stickers in the past or badges. Do we have something for the officers when, you know, they pull mom over and the kids are crying because the police are there? What do we have to settle them down? Just like to know.
We traditionally have given out badge stickers.
Okay.
Just learned earlier that we're running low and almost out of these. So we're in the process of redesigning them and
Okay.
ordering more because that is the most requested item. It's easy for the officers to carry them in their pockets and give them out. So like the fire helmets, that's kind of like our signature giveaway. In the past, we've received a large amount of stuffed animals that are new in package, that are available to the officers that can retrieve them not only from the station, but they also keep them in the back of their vehicles. So if they have a situation where it's appropriate to give something like that to a child, then they have those available too.
I was hoping that we had something to give to the kids. Thank you.
I got two things tonight. I just received another complaint this afternoon about electric bikes. This is not going to go away. Not till it gets too cold to ride them.
They'll have heaters on.
But this was a child that was not even old enough to go to school riding an electric bike on a sidewalk. Okay? What can we do? I know we've had this discussion in several committee meetings. I mean, I just think we need to work a little harder maybe because social media doesn't seem to be helping.
Chief, do you have any insight?
Well, we have discussed this in the past, and the laws are complex because there's so many different types of electric toys, devices, mobility devices. They're all defined differently depending on what they're weight and features and speed abilities are. Some are able to be operated on the sidewalk and some are not. And unfortunately, a lot of the complaints that we get are involving underage kids, you know, the 8, 14, 15-year-old age range. And a lot of the devices that they're operating are considered toys. So as far as the state law is concerned, there's not much regulating them as far as where they can be ridden and how those can be restricted under current law.
I think with the e-bikes in particular, it depends on which class it is, but if you had a very young child, they couldn't be on the class 3.
Is there an age limit
There is on the class 3.
on the class 3s or something? Yeah.
When I went through the ORC, I thought it said that any e-bike, if it's classified as an e-bike, could not have the motor engaged on the sidewalk.
Can't be engaged on the sidewalk, that's correct, yes.
Have to be pedaled.
They have to be pedaled, they cannot have the motor engaged. I don't know, but it's, you know,
I also realize that to some degree when I provide this next statement, it's not necessarily satisfactory to somebody who's complaining or sounds like it might be a cop-out, but the enforcement aspect of it, which we've discussed before,
Right.
is, okay, great, if we get a complaint, where are we in relationship to the complaint? Where is the person by the time that we get there? What were the conditions? I think I gave an example to the committee before where you know, I was not in a marked patrol vehicle, but was still chief at the time and was coming down Part E, and I saw an adult on an e-bike, not pedaling, still going along, but he's going 4 miles an hour, 5 miles. He's going just as fast as he could pedal on a bike anyways, and so I tried to put myself in the officer's shoes and say, if I was in a marked patrol car out here doing traffic enforcement, am I really stopping this guy to say, hey, I'm the police and you got to pedal this thing? And to what extent do we want to force that interaction with officers and kids? No, don't get me wrong. If somebody is doing full-blown class 3, 28 miles an hour down a sidewalk, creating hazardous conditions, I'm all for that because yes, if I'm walking my little kids down a sidewalk or any of those other things, yes, that's dangerous. Or even maybe in the square, potentially, as you've got coming in and out of businesses, restaurants, walking on the sidewalk. But in all reality, to what degree, even with the laws that are there, are we going to, and I mean that, and I get it, cop out. You guys, you don't want to enforce it, you can't be there. But like we talked about before with speed, they're not omnipresent. They can't be everywhere. How do we prioritize that? You know, do we, okay, we've gotten a couple e-bike complaints in this neighborhood, so I want you driving around the neighborhood a couple times. Well, great, maybe we don't see it while we're there, and then we're off to the next thing, and then it's not.
And if they see a marked car, they're not going to be doing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But what
So
if-
I do legitimately think that that is a hurdle in this discussion. When we find out that they are on the sidewalk, or if it's habitual, or that it is dangerous, if we know who it is, can an officer go out and talk to that family? Sure, they can. What does that actual enforcement look like?
not good.
I don't know. And so, what steps, even if we were to take additional steps in terms of our own legislation to try to restrict it, one, we need to make sure that we can. Two, if we do, I still come back to the same point, which is, what does that look like, and how are we going to do it? So, to Chief's point, it is very complicated. I mean, I found myself, whether we were discussing it here or when we were getting ready to do those social media posts, okay, I'm going back and checking every single time because it's not just a one-size-fits-all. Is it a low-speed micro-mobility device, or is it an e-bike, and anything in between?
What
I
about?
don't have a good answer for you.
What about an ordinance that said any two-wheeled motorized vehicle ridden by somebody under 18, the rider must wear a helmet?
We can,
That
We
would,
can explore
because
that.
these kids are not wearing helmets either. And that might be a way to, make them start thinking. It would help with enforcement too. Give us an opportunity to stop and say, hey, if you're gonna ride this, you gotta wear a helmet. That is a city ordinance. I don't know if it's worth that or not.
I was gonna say, that would tie up police officers more. I
All
would
day
think,
long.
Because there's so many people that don't wear helmets.
You're
They have
actually-
bigger fish to
No.
fry.
There have been schools lately, and I think it happened in Mentor, where a student was on an e-scooter in the parking lot and got hit by a car, and they have banned all e-vehicles, two-wheel vehicles, coming onto any school property. Maybe that's a discussion we have with the schools as a safety issue. I don't know.
And I guess I don't
know how they feel about that.
I mean, relatively speaking, we have few pedestrian-related or car versus bike accidents. I do not have the stats, and it would not be an easy one to pull, because if we have a car versus bike, I don't know that we have anything that we'd be able to initially easily search in records to say, not only was this a bike, but this was an e-bike. As I sit here right now, I don't know that that's a field that we have the capability of searching. And Chief, Lieutenant, you feel to weigh in as well too, but I don't know in my experience that I've had a car versus e-bike. They've obviously gained in more popularity since I've been off the road in that capacity, but I would ask either of you if you're aware of a car versus e-bike accident.
Not a specific e-bike. We've had 2 car versus dirt bike types of vehicles in the past couple of months,
Yes.
but not specific e-bikes, and I don't recall of any.
We've certainly had cars versus bikes, and some of them tragic. So I would say,
Okay,
that again,
I was
yeah.
just asked to bring it
Yep.
up again. I mean, then the last thing I just want to ask everyone to think tomorrow, what happened back in 2001? It's so very important. Take a minute and reflect on how our world was back then. So, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.